There we go. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Joanne Froggatt and Hugh Bonneville. Anyway, to start with, I want to ask both of you, Joanne, start with you. As I mentioned, this is now the most popular show on TV. When you first, got the script and were offered the role, did you think, oh, this is going to be big, or but this big? Did you ever think it could be this big?
I don't think you ever dare imagine, how successful any job you do is going to be, because that's up to the lap of the gods and the audience, really. But I remember my agent calling me and saying, I'm sending you a script, and Oscar winner Julian Fellowes has written it, and Dame Maggie Smith is attached to it. And I thought, I'll give that a read. I think that might be quite a good start. So, and then as soon as I opened the script, it was just such a page turner. And for me, those scripts don't come along every day. And when you do get a script that you open and you literally can't put down, you know your instinct is just, this is brilliant, I really want to do this.
Yeah.
And hopefully if you feel like that reading it, then as the viewers will feel like that as well. So.
What did you think, Hugh, when you first got the script?
Exactly the same, really, and I think that sensation that we all felt when reading it is what's translated to the audience. It has got this unput-downable quality. The number of people who said that they've bought the box set and sat down to watch just one episode and they're still there at midnight on episode 5 because they're hooked. Julian has this capacity to hook you in, and with a sort of Dickensian structure of serialization, if you like, and the soap element of hooking you in and making you want to know what happens next. And even if you don't like all the characters, you are invested in them in a way that you want to, you demand to know what happens next. So it has that tug of what's going to happen next, because even though it appears to be a costume drama and we all think we know that territory, no one knows how this one ends.
When you read those first scripts, though, did you think this is something special? This is, there are loads of costume dramas, as you said, but did you immediately know, yeah, this is something different?
I think we all felt that just reading it, by the end of having read episode 1, you just felt there were 16 characters really vividly in my mind. And then, of course, when they started to be cast and fleshed out, it takes on a whole new level again. But it was that sense of it being vivid from the page, from the dialogue and from the interaction of characters, that really made you feel you were in safe hands. But as Jo says, you can never second-guess the audience.
And what did you think about your character? Because he's, I guess he is the patriarch, the great patriarch of the whole show. But he's not perfect. In fact, he's quite, there are moments where he's quite horrible in a way, isn't he? What did you... No? Okay. For example, on Sunday's episode, he was revealing various prejudices he's got about Irish people and, the poor girl who had a difficult past and all of that. All that side to him is quite interesting, isn't it?
Well, it is, yeah, and I'd just like to point out, to those who do follow me on Twitter, I am not actually Lord Grantham.
Yes.
I've had people saying they're going to unfollow me because I'm, horrible to, my daughters or whatever, or that I'm bad with investments, or, it's just a bit of telly, okay? Calm down, everyone. But, no, it's great, and what I love about Julian's writing is that whenever you think you've got a character sussed or pigeonholed, Julian surprises you. Yeah. And there are twists and turns of character. Which of us is actually consistent in our lives, I would ask you. Yes. And Robert is no exception. I think sometimes people have found it too far, but, he's human. Or he's three-dimensional anyway.
And in many ways, he's the character who kind of embodies the age, isn't he? Because I think Julian interweaves a lot of issues, interestingly, into your character. This whole thing about Catholicism, I thought was interesting, that's happening at the moment. And you're the one who gets to say some quite kind of difficult, interesting stuff.
Well, Julian's allowed to say that because he's a Catholic. You know, he was brought up a Catholic, so I think that's fine. But also, you could say that Anna Leach's character, Branson, is having a good old anti-Protestant, anti-British bash, you know, a lot of the time. So I think it's fairly well balanced. I'd like to think it's fairly well balanced. And I think the thing about Robert is that he's got one foot stuck in the past. In fact, sometimes both feet. And in the first series, you felt that he was actually being conservative by birth. He had a sort of liberal tendency and had an eye of compassion and on the estate at large. And then gradually you've seen that he's sort of shrinking back into what he knows best, or what he hopes will, return eventually. And of course it won't. And that's part of the drive of the spoilers of the episodes coming up, which is that Dan's character, Matthew, who is the heir, really has to almost take Robert by the hand and lead him into the future, because he's reluctant to go there.
Absolutely. And Joanne, what did you think of your character to start with when you first were offered the role, and now how she's developed now?
I just fell in love with Anna as soon as I read her on the page. Julian has this great way of putting these characters together in such, as Hugh said, a three-dimensional way that you only have to read them, those characters being in a couple of scenes in a script, and you know who they are, and you get a real sense for them. And I just really connected with her, and I just thought, I just thought she's the kind of person you'd really want as a best friend. She's just such a good, decent person, but I liked that she had a strength about her. I didn't want her to be some wishy-washy kind of, you know, boring, nicey person. I wanted her to have a bit, you know, a backbone and all of those things which Julian had written. So I just tried to develop what Julian gave me in that way. And I like, what I love about Anna is obviously the storyline with Mr. Bates, because it's just so nice to play those scenes and to watch that, you know, that relationship develop in such a slow way. That was really enjoyable to do. And through that, she grows over the 3 series and you know, really becomes a woman. And she's a married lady now, and the trials and tribulations they've been through.
She's kind of become also kind of her own investigator almost. She's going out there.
Anna Bates investigates.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the spin-off.
There's a spin-off.
Yes, that's my spin-off.
Yeah, I hope so. But you know, she has really, that's been a very interesting development, isn't it? That I guess, and something new. I think this series that, you know, we wondered how that was going to play out, and when he ends up in prison, or what's going to happen. And she's become such a kind of key figure in that story. That must be very exciting to because I guess when there is such a huge cast that you must think sometimes, oh, how, you know, what's going to happen to my character? Is it going to stand out among such an enormous ensemble?
Yeah, I think Julian's, you know, again, fantastic at writing an ensemble piece, and therefore we all get our 15 minutes of fame within the show. You know, we all have our strengths and our weaknesses and stuff. And so, you know, when you're filming some scenes, you're supporting the scene, or you're in the background of the scene, and sometimes you're leading the scene. And he kind of spreads it out very fairly, which is good. But I think with Anna, she's she's good when she's got a purpose and she's got a mission, and her mission at the moment is to free her man, and you know, nothing will stray her from that path. So it's nice. I think she's much more, the start of series 3, she was much more positive than at the end of season 2, when obviously Mr. Bates was possibly going to get the death sentence. So when he was reprieved, at least she had something to fight for, and she had hope, and, you know, all those things that I love about her.
Yeah. And I was lucky enough to visit the set, and it is, I mean, a lot of the scenes are filmed in Highclere, this enormous house, which plays Downton, if you like. Is it odd to film a lot of it in this actual place? You know what I mean? I guess people might think, oh, it's all, you know, cardboard sets and polystyrene, but there you are filming in this massive house. Is that interesting? Is it a challenge?
It's great.
It's wonderful.
I mean, it makes our job a lot easier, doesn't it? Everything's almost done for us. I remember the first day I pulled up onto set, and it was at the house, and I knew we were filming at an actual house, and I'd seen pictures and stuff. I didn't expect it to be so grand in reality. And we just pulled up into this, you know, overwhelming, amazing building. And I just thought, I think this is going to be quite a good show.
But also just, I mean, you know, even 3 years on, I don't know if you remember that as you come into the drive, it's a landscape by Capability Brown. So there's this sense of, you know, undulating through the road undulates through the paddocks and the fields, and you get glimpses of the house, you know, ever increasing glimpses, and then suddenly there it is, and it never fails to sort of turn my tummy over. It's great. It's very
incredibly
exciting.
dramatic. Yeah, absolutely. The long drive up and all that. Yeah,
really
and freezing in February. Really cold.
Really? Yeah. No, I'm sure.
It's high up, so it's
winds from 5 counties.
I was told by someone that there's one room that the owner's never even been in the house. Is that have you heard that story? Is that true?
Yeah, well, Lady Carnarvon, I think she said she's lost count of the number of rooms in the attics.
Yeah.
Doesn't someone say, you know, once you've got more than 50 bedrooms, what's the point of counting? But he hasn't got that many. But no, the top floors have been derelict, and of course, the former Lord Carnarvon sponsored Howard Carter's expedition to the Valley of the Kings and Tutankhamun and all that wonderful, you know, intrigue and mystery and all that. And apparently, some old tea chests that Lady Carnarvon uncovered only a decade ago were full of sort of old amulets and bits of pottery and stuff, which is now made into an amazing exhibition. So it's a house full of history as well as our invented one.
Yeah.
Can I just say,
yes,
what about Dan Stevens' eyes? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
They are so blue.
Yeah. He's hot.
He is hot.
He is very hot. Yeah. I mean, you are surrounded by hot men, women, everything. I mean, the whole cast is mostly beautiful.
It's a furnace.
It's a furnace. We should add that your look at the moment isn't a kind of special bearded version of Downton, is it? You are playing a tramp.
I'm playing a tramp at the moment. Yeah, I'm doing a thing called Mr. Stink. So yes, I'm bearded up for that.
In case people think there's a strange twist coming up before the end of this. Is it fun filming? I mean, do you? I mean, this is, you know, you're not going to say you don't get on, but do you particularly have a fun time filming it? with each other?
We do have a ridiculous amount of fun, actually. We do get on, we all get on so well, and it's just one of the most fun jobs I've ever done, actually. And especially the more we do it, and obviously we've been working together for 3 years now, and there's some really great personalities in our cast. There's some big personalities, some very, very funny people, and and it's a real giggle.
Hugh, who are the kind of jokers? Who mucks about most in the cast?
Well, apart from Isis the dog, it would have to be Alan Leach, who plays Branson, who is constantly. Well, we're constantly winding each other on set and off, he's a great guy. We all genuinely get on very, very well, and it doesn't always happen, as we know.
No,
but it genuinely does in this.
Is there a lot of corpsing? Is there a lot of laughter during takes? Do you manage to keep that under control?
There's not a lot of time for corpsing.
No, really?
No, it's a very fast process, the filming process, and we're on a very tight schedule. So Michelle Dockery and I did have a corpsing day on the last series where it was it was late in the afternoon and we were both really tired, and we were joking about something, a line in the scene, and then as soon as Michelle went to say it, we just could not stop laughing, and literally we were both in tears, but we felt so guilty because obviously there's so much to get done, and it's that it's in school assembly feeling where you think I shouldn't be doing this, but I can't stop myself. But
And I remember the very first scene or second scene that we shot ever. That was me and Cora and O'Brien and Siobhan bringing in a tray to give Cora on bed with the news of the Titanic, and on the very first take she just went flying, and the marmalade and the toast and everything went right. And we didn't know each other very well then, certainly not me and Siobhan, and we just absolutely dissolved in hysterics, and so that broke the ice in a good way.
Wow.
Yeah.
And broke the china too.
What about Dame? I mean, you have a lot of scenes with Dame Maggie Smith. Pretty much every line she gets is a great comedy line, great comedy moment. Is it difficult to work with that, to have to deal with her having all these great comedy lines?
No, it's great. You just sort of, just throw up a lob and just wait for her to smash it.
Right.
It's just a joy because Julian writes for her and her brilliant delivery, which is just fantastic to sit back and absorb, really. And she nails them every time.
Yeah. And this series you've been joined by Shirley MacLaine, of course. What's that been like? Were you what did you think, first of all, when you heard about the casting, a kind of bold, interesting new development, and B, what was she actually like in person? This kind of legend.
Well, casting-wise, I just thought, wow, that's genius casting, just fantastic. I mean, I didn't really have any scenes with Shirley because our characters wouldn't have, have spoken to each other. So, but I was in the background of a scene that she was in, and so I walked on set, and I hadn't met Shirley yet, and. It was in the scene in the first or second episode, I think, where they have a house party and she sings. So she was practicing her song at the piano, all dressed in her amazing outfit and big feather in her hat. And so I just walked on set, and there's amazing Shirley MacLaine stood there singing. I was like, this is so surreal. This is incredible. She was just a joy. We loved having her around. She just rolled her sleeves up, got stuck in, didn't she? She was great fun.
She was fantastic. She and Maggie had apparently met briefly at the Oscars 40 years ago. Shirley had forgotten that.
Wow.
And so when they met in the hall, I can remember it vividly. It was a sort of 7:45, just before we start rehearsing in the morning, on a cold February or March day, with these big puffer jackets on, everyone trying to, cuddling hot water bottles. And the director said, "Oh, Shirley, have you met Maggie?" And she turned around, and it was like Stanley meeting Livingston. It really was. It was, my God! And they hugged and sort of virtually lifted each other off the ground. And we knew we were in for a good few weeks because they got on famously. And just to sit at these dining room scenes, as I so often do, and to have Maggie on one side and Shirley on the other, and them sort of leaning across discussing Jack Lemmon and Olivier and all these greats that I grew up admiring so much, and they were old muckers to them, so it was fascinating to pick up tidbits.
It was the only time I was really jealous of not being an upstairs character, not being able to be privy to those conversations.
Dame Maggie must have an incredible array of stories from her.
Absolutely, none of which can be repeated here.
Okay. Damn. The other thing I was going to say is that I guess the casting of Shirley MacLaine reflects the show's, to some extent, huge popularity in America. And I mentioned before how this series doesn't start till January, so we can't, for the podcast reasons, we don't want to give too much away. What do you think about the international success of it and the fact that, you have to kind of bear in mind that it's being shown at a different time all over the world?
To be honest, this is quite a passion of mine.
Yeah.
And I would urge distributors all around the world in this internet age. I mean, you're watching this at home on your devices of various sorts now, the podcast version. You are seeing things immediately, in real time. And the idea of trying for everyone to keep stum about what's happening in different parts of the world is increasingly impossible.
Yeah.
Quite apart from what's being downloaded legally or illegally, it makes sense for everyone to have a shorter release window, be it in movies or TV, particularly, obviously, not everywhere, not for all shows, but for very popular shows, which in this day and age can be spoiled instantaneously, immediately. And I really hope that the release windows will get narrower and narrower. Obviously, different countries have different seasons, literally different seasons, and would you show a sort of warm, cosy winter show in high summer? That's a risk you're going to have to take. Will the audience now, for a show like Downton, or be it Sherlock or Doctor Who, which does have same day in America, will that audience stay loyal now? I suspect they would, and I think you'd not wipe out, but you'd reduce piracy instantly, and also, more importantly, rather than watching on some poxy laptop, which has got stuttering downloading or whatever, and you're getting not necessarily good quality, you can watch it on your telly in beautiful HD with amazing sound, which is the way that we shot it and we want it to be watched. So you're sort of cheating yourselves as much as anything. And I know it's incredibly hard in this day and age to wait for it to come up, and it's very hard for people who are engaged in online conversations to keep quiet. But I hope one way round it is for release windows to be brought more into a narrower time frame.
And because we're used to American shows that we watch here, now I think most channels are cottoning on to the fact that people want to see the American shows almost as soon as it goes out in the States, so that it's not spoiled for us. Do you agree with that, Jo? Is that something that...
Yeah, I mean, when we've done quite a few press visits to the States, together amongst a group of us, and that's the main feedback we get, actually, isn't it, when we're out there, is from everybody saying, why do we have to wait so long? And, and you do get the odd person saying, we've already seen it. So, which we're not allowed, obviously we can't condone that.
Somehow they've seen it.
Somehow, I'm not sure how. So it does seem to make sense that, people want to see it that quickly. Yeah. And especially when a show has become a success like Downton or Doctor Who or Sherlock and all those things that have been successful overseas, it does, once it's been tried and tested, it does... make sense to bring those dates closer together so everyone can see it at the same time.
You do have a lot of scenes where you're on the verge of tears, don't you? In recent weeks, is that difficult to?
I blame Mr. Bates.
Yes. Yes.
Creating the emotion.
Yeah, having to cry pretty much, regularly.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, some days it's easier than others.
I just look at Alan Leach.
Of course. Yeah.
I suppose it's like anything. I think it's about concentration more than anything else. Actually, it's about just really concentrating on what you're doing and what you're supposed to be feeling and the situation you're supposed to be in. I actually do a lot less crying on Downton than I have on other jobs, so it's quite a holiday for me, actually.
Yeah. You specialised in playing a lot of real women who've been through awful situations, haven't you? We should say that, yeah.
Yeah.
And of which you've been nominated for awards, won awards. So was it in a way a relief to get a character who's kind of properly fictional and you can portray however the hell you want?
It was a nice change. I think as an actor, you constantly want to prove how versatile you are, and you constantly want to ring the changes. We have a very short attention span. I think I speak for most of us. So it's I always need something new and different, and I want to do a part that's different from the last part. And so Anna did feel like quite a departure for me, and I've really, really enjoyed playing her. That's not to say I won't go back to my roots at some point and do a good old gritty, traumatic role, but it's nice to have those changes.
Sure. And I must ask you about, the hair in that scene, for example, incredible. And hair and costume, it is a huge part of the success of the show, isn't it, I think? That how people love the kind of sumptuousness of the whole thing, do you think? And do you is that enjoyable for you as well, to be part of all that?
I love dressing up, or dressing down, as I do in Downton. I think, again, as an actor, it just helps your whole performance, having the costume, we wear corsets. For me, it's a no makeup look and a very plain hairstyle, and it you know, as soon as I put on my costume, I feel like Anna.
Yeah.
So in terms of that, it certainly helps. And I'm obsessed with the girls' costumes upstairs because I love clothes. So I'm just like, oh my God, that lace is amazing, and oh, that beading's beautiful. And so I enjoy seeing everybody else's kind of more extravagant outfits.
And you've had some good wedding. You know, you've had a great wedding. You know,
always nice to get the glad rags on. But no, I think the way that the fashion has subtly changed, obviously from 1912 through to 1921, as we now are. 1920, are we? I can't remember.
1920, yeah.
Now, yeah. You know, to see that shift in the women's fashion particularly, and of course for the men, you know, the dangerous breaking out from white tie into black tie, and all that. No, it's fascinating, and of course it's actually filtered into the high street in a way. There are some brands that have been embracing the Edwardian look of the 20s. So. Who knows for next season? But I remember Michelle saying that the relief this year is not having to have such tight corsets, or not to have corsets at all.
We
is
have
that right?
Some people have got away without them, and some of us still have to wear them. But we've got elasticated corsets, so it means you can breathe. So that's very nice.
So have I actually. I have elasticated corsets.
Fair enough. You didn't need to tell us that. Before I throw it open to the audience for questions, so do be thinking of your questions. I was going to ask, how much do you talk to Julian Fellows, who writes every episode, doesn't he, on his own, about what's going to happen to your characters? Is he there on set ever? Do you talk to him about that, or is he accessible, or are you happy to let him do what he wants to do, and then you find out what's happening to your character?
A bit of both, really. He's very accessible, Julian. We've all got a very good relationship with him. He, especially during the first series, he came on set and a lot, and we've spent a lot of time with him and his wife Emma, and I think, well, for me personally, I never ask what's going to happen. I've kind of got complete faith in where he's going to take, and for me, Anna and Bates, or my character. And I've had such nice storylines and such nice things to do that I just think, oh, it's not broke, don't fix it.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'd agree totally. He's always at the end of a phone or whatever if you've got a query, normally in my case about pronunciation.
Me too, that's mine.
Yeah. But he did say, I remember at the read-through of the very first episode, he said, one thing I've got to say is that, he said, we're not parking cars, it's valet, not valet. So that was the first lesson. But no, like you, Joe, I'm constantly... I feel totally safe in his hands. He knows his characters better than we do, and the structure of the whole piece, and the instruments they play in the orchestra of the whole.
Yeah. What's been the most, if you like, surprising thing for you, the twists or plot developments that you've had so far in these 3 series? Or perhaps the most enjoyable, kind of pleasurable thing that's happened to your character for you?
I don't know. I think every script's a surprise, actually. It is. Whenever we get a script through the door, because we start off, I think the first series we started off, did we start off with 4 scripts?
We read 5 at the...
we read 5. Yeah. We read 5. So we had quite a chunk, beforehand. And each one, you're constantly surprised, really, as hopefully the viewers are as well, because there's constant twists and turns and everything else. So when we're in the middle of doing a series and the next script kind of drops through the letterbox onto my doormat, I'm literally kind of like ripping it open to see what happens next. So that's a kind of constant feeling, I think.
Okay. Now we've got the penultimate episode on Sunday, I believe, and then the final one after, which is an hour and a half special, which I was looking at today, and there's a big I can reveal this without giving too much. There's a big cricket match, which is a very British way of ending it. Now I imagine you're a cricket man. You look like very at home in those whites.
Well, I was in my younger days. I was very excited about it. It was good fun, and Dan's a good cricketer. We in fact shooting that was one of the biggest challenges we had because, as you may remember, it was a pretty wet spring and summer, and we needed 3 days to shoot this particular sequence. And we'd already suffered with rain trying to shoot a picnic sequence when we go to visit Airy Home, and that had to move 2, if not 3 times because of weather. And we were desperate. The gods would be be kind to us. And on the whole, they've always been really kind to us, the weather gods. When it's mattered, they've come good. And this time we had 3, it literally was bucketing down the day before, and the heavens opened during the last shot over 3 days. So we were very lucky. Yes, and that's a significant part of the final episode.
Yeah, very exciting. And I think there's another Christmas special, isn't there?
There's a Christmas episode, and unlike last year, I think I'm not breaking any contractual things here. It's not actually set at Christmas.
Oh, okay.
So it's got a very different tone. It's time has moved on a little bit. I think it's about 8 or 9 months. Okay. And I'll leave the rest for your enjoyment.
Oh no, tell us something else. Come on. Let's throw it open to this. Now, first we should say that the official Downton Abbey Twitter feed is here. It's a man in a flat cap at the front, and they did throw it open to the huge array of Downton Abbey fans around the world, basically. So, have you had any good questions from the Downton Abbey fans via Twitter?
Hello, Hugh. Hi, Jo.
Hey.
Hi, Boyd. For both, and this is from KBill15. We've got a question. What has been the hardest scene for both of you to prepare for and execute thus far?
Good question.
For me, it was probably the scene in Series 2 where Mr. Bates gets sentenced, because I knew he was going to get sentenced to death, obviously, because I'd read the script. And it was one of those moments where I wanted it to be really just really intense, but not thought out. It was just a reaction, and I wanted it to be a real gut reaction. And it was nice to be able to play a scene like that for, playing a woman in those times, giving such an emotional reaction in public, which, wouldn't have happened unless you were in some devastating situation like that one. So, and it was that was quite difficult, because I kept thinking, how am I going to play this? I'm not quite sure how to do it. And then I just decided I'm not going to think about it. I'm just going to see what comes out, on the day. So I think it's not that it was more difficult. It's just the nerves of not quite planning what you're going to do and hoping that works. And I felt like it did. So hopefully everyone else did as well.
For me, really, it's any scene involving Isis the dog, because she's a moody little bitch, and she rarely comes out of her trailer, and demands snacks at all times. But that aside, I suspect really the scenes that we've been touching on in the last couple of episodes, which have been obviously quite, trying to pitch them at the right level so that they're not overly melodramatic, but they have true emotion in them. And I think particularly the scene towards the end of the last episode that's just been on, when Cora and myself and Violet are all together trying to reconcile what's happened. That was it's a very delicately written scene, and that was a challenge to get that pitched right.
Yeah. Thank you to Downton Abbey Twitter feed. We could come back to you.
Thank you, K-Bill.
But let's throw it over to the audience. There's a lady there in the second row. Yes.
Hi, I just want to say thank you. First of all, I'm American, and I'm just graduated from high school. I just want to say thank you for bringing such kind of an educational, historical show to a lot of kids who normally wouldn't see that sort of stuff. So I want to thank you for that, because that's really, really good. And I have a question for both of you. What was the most fun scene you had to shoot?
First of all, I would just pause on going too far down. This is a historically accurate show. Okay, this is a bit of telly, and we've been had up before for apparently pretending to be otherwise. It's lovely that you say that. If it sends someone to a history book, then fantastic. But it is telly. Let's just get that straight. And it's fictional. I think the most fun scene. I remember with huge affection shooting the final episode of Series 1, which was the big sort of garden party, and it, of course, led to the announcement of war. But I personally love the scenes when we're all together. It's a nightmare for costume and makeup, because they've got 16 central characters to look after, and usually a whole load of supporting artists as well. But I love it when we're all together, when the ensemble is truly an ensemble, and the weather again was spectacularly kind to us then, and it was just approaching summer, and no one knew that the show was any good. Yet.
Yeah, the same for me, actually. Scenes where we're all together are lovely, because sort of sometimes we don't get to see some of the actors for, say, 2 weeks at a time or something, because we're filming in different locations. So it's really nice when we all get together and have a catch up and see what everybody's been up to. And I love doing the servants' hall scenes. We have a lot of fun in the servants' hall. Again, it's because it's big group scenes. There's a lot of big personalities downstairs, and we have a real giggle. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and we have a lot of fun in the dining room.
We have more fun downstairs.
We actually play Wink Murder. In one of those mustard pots are 8 little folded bits of paper, one of which has a cross on it. That is a trade secret.
Wow.
Is that what you do?
We don't do it during the take. We do it between takes.
Proper games upstairs. Yeah.
Parlour games.
Yeah, very good. Parlour games. Any other questions? Yes, a lady there.
How long does it take to film dinner scenes?
They are pretty much the longest, I would imagine. As in fact, any table scene in any drama takes a long time, simply because for technical reasons of eye lines and where you put cameras and so on. But there was, I think it was the infamous lobster scene of episode 1 of series 1 that took 2.5 days.
Wow.
It wasn't actually lobster; it was something else. But it was something that went really smelly after about 4 hours. And since then, the Lisa, who makes the food for us for the actual scenes, has learned her lesson that actually having something that goes really high by about 3 p.m. isn't great, and so she's used much less smelly products. But they can take up to 2 days if you're, and of course they whiz by on screen in 90 seconds or so. But they are quite challenging, so we have to keep ourselves entertained.
Wink Murder.
Wink Murder.
Wink Murder.
Thank you. Hi. I just wondered if you ever had the opportunity to play any other character in Downton, who would it be and why, male or female?
Isis the dog, just
Yes.
to annoy you. No, I'm joking.
Yeah.
Who would I play? I don't know. That's a good question, actually. I'd quite like to play Mr. Molesley. It sounds weird, but I just love the character Mr. Molesley. I just think he's forever just missing the mark, bless him, and he's always just never quite getting there, and Kevin that plays him does such a brilliant job, and I'd quite enjoy playing that kind of character, I think. Yeah.
What's wonderful is that Molesley was a relatively small part in the first series, but he made such a mark with everyone, particularly Julian, that he's grown as a character, and he's such an integral part now. He's glorious. Who would I play? I think I'd like to play Daisy.
We'd all like to see that. Yeah. Very good question. Thank you. Now I'll just go over here. My eye line was that way. Yes, lady there at the end of the row.
I've heard you have a historical advisor on set, but do you do any other research to help you immerse yourself in the culture of the period?
We do have a fantastic historical advisor called Alistair Bruce, who he's just like our...
He's called the Oracle.
Oh, yes, he is our Oracle. He's amazing. More so when we first started, Alistair gave us a big talk about the etiquette and for the downstairs characters, how you would serve food and the way you would do things and how to turn a bed down and all those things, and the etiquette of the day and being in that kind of period and the constraints of that period. I watched quite a lot of documentaries about the time just to refresh my memory, and we watched Gosford Park again and all those things to get that feeling of how that kind of household ran. I also read a book called Keeping Their Place, which is it's real letters and diary entries from servants and their masters, and it's quite interesting to just get that personal take on things as well after reading the facts and figures and things like that. It was nice to hear just a parlour maid sending a love letter to her boy. Well, you wouldn't call it boyfriend, but so that was quite nice. Oh, well, yes, you do. Yes, we had this conversation. We do, yeah.
Oh, boyfriend signs it. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
1880 something.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I'm rubbish at research. I just read the Beano. I'm sorry, I'm
Fair
useless.
enough. Fair enough. Shall we see if any more Twitter feed questions for our official Downton Abbey?
I hope you haven't covered any of these so far, but...
You've not been paying attention?
No.
Been doing my best, but been tweeting.
Oh, fair enough.
No.
We'll let you know. If there's any repetition, we'll let you know.
Quite a nice, simple one. What's been your favourite line so far? And that's from
Line? Oh.
No light, _
What is a weekend?
Yeah.
That one,
Yeah,
probably.
that was great.
Yeah.
My character's favourite line is coming up in 2 weeks' time, so I can't actually say that. But I think everyone. I mean, there are T-shirts around the world with Maggie's great slogans on. So I think, what is a weekend? And what else? That'll do. What are yours? Let's have some of yours favourite lines. Oh, that's right. Why does every day involve a fight with an American?
Oh, yeah.
And my other favourite one is if you're turning American on me, I'm going downstairs. Which could be taken in so many ways.
Yes. Yes. Thanks, Hugh.
Following on from that, from Chow Manu asks, will we ever see Lady Violet going downstairs?
Oh.
Ah, interesting.
Don't know.
I think I'm not, again, spoiling anything by saying she doesn't in this series. But I think that would be very interesting, because it is such an interesting sort of seismic shift when, those boundaries are crossed, and the impact, the rippling impact it has, and also the deference that Carsten has when he comes into a room downstairs, everyone stands.
Yeah.
The structure is so fascinating, I find. Bonkers, but fascinating.
Yeah. Fantastic. Lady there, yes. A real person, not someone on Twitter. People on Twitter are real, but they're not here right now.
I was just wondering, why is Lord Grantham's political role not mentioned on the show? Is it just because it might be quite boring, or are there other reasons? His political role.
Well, he's actually I don't know what sort of peer. I don't even know what peer. He's a Tory peer, but his title comes from his hereditary line. And that's a good point, actually. I've never thought about why he doesn't go to the House of Lords. I mean, he pops in, I suppose, to collect the post, but...
there are probably loads of Tory peers that couldn't be bothered.
Yeah, I think...
I'm just guessing.
Yes, historically. Obviously, today they are very active and vote all the time. That's a very good question. I shall email Julian tonight and ask him, can we go to the House of Lords, please?
And you can tweet about it, because you're a prolific Twitterer yourself, aren't you, Hugh?
Yes, I binge tweet, yes.
Do you? Yes.
Sometimes I think it's all nonsense, and sometimes I really have a nice time
I think
doing
people who are looking at your Twitter feed last night might want to know whether you ever found your hotel. Because you were encircling the Excel Centre looking for your hotel.
Those who don't know the Excel Exhibition Centre in Docklands, it's huge, and at night it's dark, and last night was drizzly, and my, dare I say, app told me that the hotel was in one place. In fact, it was the entire other length of the XL, and it took me hours to find it. So, yes, I did get to the hotel. Thank you very much.
We've got time for a couple of more questions. Just the lady at the end there.
Hi. I'm just wondering, what are the similarities between you and your characters?
Well, I'm very nice as well.
I can vouch for that.
I don't know. Yeah, I suppose there's probably more of me in Anna than a lot of other characters I've played, but she's actually a bit she's probably stronger than I am in the way that she doesn't care what people think. She's very confident in her own mind, and she knows that she's on the right path, and she doesn't stray from that for anyone really. And that's something I quite admire about her, that I'd like to be a little bit more like that. So.
Well, apart from the fact that I'm 6'2", tall like this, and obviously look like Brad Pitt, I think that's about as far as it goes. I don't share a huge amount in common with him, I would say. I'd like to think I'm a bit smarter than him. I think I'm a little bit more streetwise than he is. I'm fond of him, but I don't think I think our dinner conversation would dry up after the soup, because I don't think he's really that worldly wise about what's going on outside his domain necessarily. I think he's a decent man, he's a kind man, he means well, but let's face it, in this series he's made a couple of bad calls. But then I suppose all those people who invested with Bernie Madoff made some bad calls too. But I think he's a decent guy, which I'm not, and what I don't have is his heating bills either.
No one wants those, do they? And one more, the gentleman there we go. We haven't had many questions from men, but here we are. Thank you.
Hi, my question's for Joanne. Just picking up on the name of that book that you used to research, do you ever think that Anna doesn't keep her place, particularly with Mary, and is more like a sister than a servant?
Yeah, I think Anna's always aware of the constraints of her role in the house, but I think because she's become such a well-trusted, well-loved member of staff, there's been that room to grow that relationship with her and Lady Mary, which has been a really nice thing to play. And again, that's happened very gradually over the series. And And you see little points where occasionally where, that line is put down again by Lady Mary. I think there's a point in series 2 where she kind of chastises Anna for not saying something to or for saying something to Matthew about something. So it's always really interesting because we never hug each other or we never go that extra step, but it's nice to develop that friendship in that way, because I think it makes it more interesting actually than a free relationship in a way.
That's very good. Thank you. That is all we've got time for, I'm afraid. But I want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank the Apple Store for hosting us. And this time, next Wednesday, more Downton Chat in a week and a day's time. And I just want to thank you two, Joanne Froggatt and Hugh Bonneville. Thanks very much for coming.
Thank you very much. Oh, yeah.
There we go. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Joanne Froggatt and Hugh Bonneville. Anyway, to start with, I want to ask both of you, Joanne, to start with you. As I mentioned, this is now the most popular show on TV. When you first, got the script and were offered the role, did you think, oh, this is going to be big, or but this big? Did you ever think it could be this big?
I don't think you ever dare imagine, how successful any job you do is going to be, because that's up to the lap of the gods and the audience, really. But I remember my agent calling me and saying, I'm sending you a script, and Oscar winner Julian Fellowes has written it, and Dame Maggie Smith is attached to it. And I thought, I'll give that a read. I think that might be quite a good start. So, and then as soon as I opened the script, it was just such a page turner. And for me, those scripts don't come along every day. And when you do get a script that you open and you literally can't put down, you your instinct is just, this is brilliant, I really want to do this.
Yeah.
And hopefully if you feel like that reading it, then as the viewers will feel like that as well. So.
What did you think, Hugh, when you first got the script?
Exactly the same, really, and I think that sensation that we all felt when reading it is what's translated to the audience. It has got this unput-downable quality. The number of people who said that they've bought the box set and sat down to watch just one. So I think it's fairly well balanced. I'd like to think it's fairly well balanced. And I think the thing about Robert is that he's got one foot stuck in the past. In fact, sometimes both feet. And in the first series, you felt that he was actually being conservative by birth. He had a sort of liberal tendency and had an eye of compassion and on the estate at large. And then gradually you've seen that he's sort of shrinking back into what he knows best, or what he hopes will, return eventually. And of course it won't. And that's part of the drive of the spoilers of the episodes coming up, which is that Dan's character, Matthew, who is the heir, really has to almost take Robert by the hand and lead him into the future, because he's reluctant to go there.
Absolutely. And Joanne, what did you think of your character to start with when you first were offered the role, and now how she's developed now?
I just fell in love with Anna as soon as I read her on the page. Julian has this great way of putting these characters together in such, as Hugh said, a three-dimensional way that you only have to read them, those characters being in a couple of scenes in a script, and you know who they are, and you get a real sense for them. And I just really connected with her, and I just thought she's the kind of person you'd really want as a best friend. She's just such a good, decent person, but I liked that she had a strength about her. I didn't want her to be some wishy-washy kind of, boring, nicey person. I wanted her to have a bit, a backbone and all of those things which Julian had written. So I just tried to develop what Julian gave me in that way. And I like, what I love about Anna is obviously the storyline with Mr. Bates, because it's just so nice to play those scenes and to watch that, that relationship develop in such a slow way. That was really enjoyable to do. And through that, she grows over the 3 series and really becomes a woman. And she's a married lady now, and the trials and tribulations they've been through.
She's kind of become also kind of her own investigator almost. She's going out there.
Anna Bates investigates.
Yeah. That's the spin-off.
There's a spin-off.
Yes, that's my spin-off.
Yeah, I hope so. But she has really, that's been a very interesting development, isn't it? That I guess, and something new. I think this series that we wondered how that was going to play out, and when he ends up in prison, or what's going to happen. She's become such a kind of key figure in that story. That must be very exciting to because I guess when there is such a huge cast that you must think sometimes, what's going to happen to my character? Is it going to stand? I mean, for example, on Sunday's episode, he was revealing various prejudices he's got about Irish people and, the poor girl who had a difficult past and all of that. All that side to him is quite interesting, isn't it?
Well, it is, yeah, and I'd just like to point out, to those who do follow me on Twitter, I am not actually Lord Grantham.
Yes.
I've had people saying they're going to unfollow me because I'm, horrible to, my daughters or whatever, or that I'm bad with investments, or, it's just a bit of telly, okay? Calm down, everyone. But, no, it's great, and what I love about Julian's writing is that whenever you think you've got a character sussed or pigeonholed, Julian surprises you. And there are twists and turns of character. Which of us is actually consistent in our lives, I would ask you.
Yes.
And Robert is no exception. I think sometimes people have found it too far, but, he's human, or he's three-dimensional anyway.
And in many ways, he's the character who kind of embodies the age, isn't he? Because I think Julian interweaves a lot of issues, interestingly, to your character. This whole thing about Catholicism, I thought was interesting, that's happening at the moment. And you're the one who gets to say some quite kind of difficult, interesting stuff.
Well, Julian's allowed to say that because he's a Catholic. He was brought up a Catholic, so I think that's fine. But also, you could say that Anna Leach's character, Branson, is having a good old anti-Protestant, anti-British bash, a lot of the time episode, and they're still there at midnight on episode 5 because they're hooked. Julian has this capacity to hook you in, and with a sort of Dickensian structure of serialization, if you like, and the soap element of hooking you in and making you want to know what happens next. And even if you don't like all the characters, you are invested in them in a way that you want to, you demand to know what happens next. So it has that tug of what's going to happen next, because even though it appears to be a costume drama, and we all think we know that territory, no one knows how this one ends.
When you read those first scripts, did you think this is something special? This is, there are loads of costume dramas, you said, but did you immediately know, this is something different?
I think we all felt that just reading it, by the end of having read episode 1, you just felt there were 16 characters really vividly in my mind. And then, of course, when they started to be cast and fleshed out, it takes on a whole new level again. But it was that sense of it being vivid from the page, from the dialogue and from the interaction of characters, that really made you feel you were in safe hands. But as Jo says, you can never second-guess the audience.
And what did you think about your character? Because he's, I guess he is the patriarch, the great patriarch of the whole show. But he's not perfect. In fact, he's quite, there are moments where he's quite horrible in a way, isn't he? What did you... No? Okay.